Hi. I'm sorry that I'm like so late. I was stuck in traffic. It's raining in the DC area, so typically when it's rain, traffic is already bad. Rain just makes it worse. But I am here for a video that I promised that I would do to talk about. Hi, I have no idea who just joined, but I'm just saying hello. To talk about mental health in the Black church and why we don't talk about it. So, before I get started, if you guys have any questions or concerns, feel free to leave it in the comments or message me directly. Just really saying hello to my wonderful fireflies. And basically, I came up with that name because I wanted to start creating and building my own community to talk about mental health. And so fireflies, we know what typically happens at night. The fireflies use their, hey Toya, they use their light they use their light to help us see in the dark. And so with me, that's what any type of mental illness is. Typically, most people feel like they're in the dark, and we're just going to come together to shed light so we can normalize mental health and mental illness to help break the stigma. So that's really why I wanted to start creating this community. And so last time I was on here, we talked about depression versus sadness. And the main thing was that sadness is a normal emotion. We experience sadness if we lose someone that we really care about, or we may go through a breakup, lose a job. It's normal to experience sadness, but when it is typically a mental illness, it takes a bit longer to get. Thanks for sharing, Toya. It takes us a bit longer to get to work through the process. And so sadness is normal. Yes, depression is not. So a person could look fine on the outside and have the house, the car, the American dream, and all that good stuff, but still not feel well on the inside. And so I really, really wanted to have the topic about mental health in the Black church and why we don't talk about it, because it really stopped me from getting help. And I think we should really start having the conversation. I'm glancing over because I have lots of notes that I want to make sure that I tackle things. And so mental health in the Black church, why we don't talk about it or why we don't get help. I'm going to give 2 reasons based on my experiences and the experiences of others that I have encountered when we've talked about it, about Black people that are involved in the church and mental health, people from when I was in the hospital, and just with family and friends. And so I'm not saying that the things that I'm about to share is true for every single Christian or religious person or every single church, because everyone experiences are completely different. I'm not here to attack anybody because I don't want anyone to feel as though, hey Shanara, I don't want anyone to feel like I'm trying to attack them or the religion of Christianity, because I do identify and consider myself a Christian. But I think it's important that we talk about it, because for some reason, Black people, we already don't talk about mental health or mental illness. And then when you want to talk about Black people in the church, it's like we really don't talk about it. So I'm coming just as a way to help us end the stigma and just open the conversation. Again, not to attack or judge anybody. It's all in the spirit of love and just helping us have the conversation. So we know a lot of times what mental illness can be. It could be bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, social anxiety, generalized anxiety disorder, depression, you name it. Those are just some of the ones. Sorry, my email's going off. But those are some of the ones that, but for some reason, we're just not talking about it. And I'm not, and for me, I know there was a few reasons why I didn't talk about it, because I know that I'm like, well, if I view myself as this, as a Christian, what are people going to think about me? Or am I going to speak something into existence? My mommy's on. Hey, mommy. Or am I going to speak something into existence if I say that I have a mental illness? And so I think one of the reasons why we don't talk about it is because we think as Black people we could just pray everything away for some reason. I don't know why that is. Now, that's not to say that prayer does not work, because I do believe that prayer does work, because I've seen God perform a lot of, sorry, mommy, I have seen God perform a lot of miracles in my life. So yes, prayer does work. But sometimes, God requires, Delisa, hey, sometimes God requires us to do a bit more. And that could be going to the doctor, whether that's a therapist or a psychiatrist. And then also, you can also choose to get help within the church, because I do see that churches are coming around and starting to talk about mental illness and mental health a bit more. But of course, we have a long way to go. I think that we shouldn't depend on medications or depend on a doctor. As Christians, we know that our strength and our source is grounded in our relationship with God. Or, of course, whether that's reading your Bible, praying, going to church, whatever you have to do to feed yourself spiritually. But God also provides us with resources. And those resources can include, again, medication, going to therapy or seeing a psychiatrist, or whatever type of treatment you may need. And so I think that it's important that we, at least for a lot of Christians, stop being so super, super deep. Sometimes I feel like we're just so deep as Christians that we sometimes remove ourselves away from reality and sometimes can't connect. So based on my experience, I remember when I had told a church leader what I was experiencing, actually a few, what I was experiencing and what I was dealing with. And they was just telling me like, oh, girl, hey, Kim, you just need to pray. You just need to pray. You'll be fine. And so I'm like, well, by you making that statement, you automatically assume that I'm not praying, which is not true. Of course I'm praying if I'm dealing with something. And so sometimes I find that to be a bit insensitive to assume that a person who's going through something, they're not trying to cope with it. And so my mom says we think therapy is not for us, and Black people, or to politically correct African Americans. Yeah, because we think it's a white people thing for some reason. I don't know where we got that from. But going back to, us thinking we could pray everything away. It's also like sometimes we're sweeping stuff under the rug for some reason. I don't, if we tend to just pray, yes, you can pray, but you also have to deal with things as well, like face them. Hey, Chanel. We also have to deal with things head on. So I always recommend to anybody who, especially, whether you're a Christian or not, to seek therapy for help. If you know that if you may be dealing with a mental illness or know someone else who may be dealing with one. And I'm glancing over because I have lots of notes. And so the first reason that I was going to say we think we could pray everything away. The second reason, seeking treatment for some of us, it shows a lack of faith. I don't know where we got that from either. It's like for some reason, we have all of these myths. It's like a secret society. I remember for so long I didn't tell people what I was diagnosed with, because I was like, they're going to think that I'm crazy. And it doesn't mean that a person is crazy. At the end of the day, we're all human beings trying to figure our way out through life. And no one has it figured out, whether you're 18 or 76. So I think we should be a bit more, give ourselves a bit more compassion and stop being so quick to judge others and also thinking that other people are judging us. Because at the end of the day, we know as Christians or as believers in God where our source comes from. So it's important to make sure that you're working on yourself and not really be so concerned about what the next person may be dealing with. Because at the end of the day, truth be told, we're all dealing with issues. A person could have a smile on their face and act like you see them posting their pictures on Instagram with their bae or on their vacations, but they could still be hurting on the inside. They could be quoting scriptures up and down. You see them shouting in church, they can still be hurting. And so I think it's important for us to stop judging people based on the outer appearances, because we don't know what a person is dealing with. So if I know for me, I thought if I said something was wrong, I thought that it would make me look like I have a lack of faith or like I was weak. And so I remember when I reached out to some of my church family members. I'm back. Sorry, guys. It was saying that there was a poor connection. I know when I reached out to some of my church family, I was told that, well, if I say that I have this illness, and for me it's generalized anxiety disorder and major depressive disorder, if I say I'm speaking it into existence, yes, we know that the tongue is powerful and that what you say out of your mouth will come to pass. So we do have to be careful about that. But you wouldn't say to a person who has cancer, knowing they have cancer, and say like, well, if you tell the person I have cancer, you're going to speak it into existence. No, that's not the case. It's just that it's their reality. It's the reality for some people that they have cancer. It's the reality that some people have diabetes. It's a reality that I could accidentally break my arm and I have to go to the hospital to get an x-ray and a cast. Mental illness should be treated the same way, but for some reason it's like this secret thing, or people are embarrassed to talk about it. And so that's why I wanted to start doing the Facebook Lives and creating a community so we can start just having the conversation. I don't know what some of you who are on the live, what you may have dealt with, or if you dealing with the mental illness or know someone who's dealing with the mental illness, to just really encourage people to start talking about it more. I think it's okay for us to feed our spirits as Christians or whatever a person's religion may be. But you do what you can in the spiritual, whether that's fasting, praying, reading your Bible, etc. But you also do what you can in the physical as well. And I also like to use the analogy of, we heard of, supernatural. So I believe I do what I can in the natural, and God will do what he can in the super. And together, God and I make supernatural. So I think it's important that we use our God-given brain, And my mom says, what's the difference between sadness and depression? Oh, Mom, you're late. I answered that already. But I'll answer it again. But I think it's important for us to understand that, we, at the end of the day, we all deal with something. And whether some people's may manifest in a mental illness and others may not, it's still important that you take care of your health and your wellness. I'll answer the question in regards to the difference between sadness and depression. So sadness is a normal emotion. We all experience sadness when someone passes away, if we lose a job, if we go through a really bad breakup. We all experience sadness. Sadness is a completely normal emotion. The thing is, with sadness, it typically goes away. So, for instance, if you lose your job and you're sad because you may not be able to provide for your family, that's normal. If you secure a new job and your sadness goes away and you feel like, oh, I just had this quick moment and I bounced back, then that's completely normal. the difference with depression is that a person who's depressed, they can experience sadness, but depression is a mental illness and it's also abnormal. It's not normal. So it affects the way that you perceive the world. It affects your thoughts and your actions. So a depressed person could look fine on the outside. They could be smiling. They could have, I'll use myself as an example, because for some reason, people thought because I had 2 degrees and I've done, had all these great opportunities, that I was somehow exempt from experiencing mental illness or any type of emotions from the next person. But truth be told, I think people who are ambitious, like myself, we actually probably get the most of it because we're very type A people. But yeah, so depression is a chemical imbalance in the brain. And so what medication does, when people who take medication, it's supposed to help balance the serotonin levels in their brain. So if you are depressed, your serotonin levels are pretty low, and the medicine helps to produce more serotonin in your brain so you can be balanced and not feel depressed. So it's typically a change that happens in your life. A life event could alter it, so you could lose your job. But the thing is, with depression, it stays there. It kind of lingers. It never goes away. So you could work out and still feel the same. You could still feel depressed. You could start losing weight. You could start gaining weight. Thanks for sharing and liking, guys. You have a lack of interest in things that you normally like to do. So say if you like working out, or if you have a brunch that you always like going to every weekend with your friends. Hey, Denise, if you have anything that's different from your normal schedule, like if you no longer find pleasure in things that you used to enjoy, that's a sign. That's typically a sign of depression. For a lot of people, they experience is like they actually can't physically get up out of bed. I know when I was in a very bad episode, I could not get out of bed. But that's typically what the difference is. Sadness usually goes away, but depression, it lingers. And just to make sure that I'm politically correct, I want to make sure that I'm pulling from my notes. Give me 1 second. Sorry, guys. So yes, with depression, it's if a person is maybe eating too much or eating too little, that's a change. If they're losing too much weight or gaining too much weight, that's a change. So that's how you typically know is if it's depression, because it throws a person off from their normal schedule. And with sadness, again, like I said, it typically goes away, but depression lingers. So yes, mommy, I answered that question. But I really just wanted to do this video to talk about Black church and mental health, because we need to start having the conversation and not automatically assume that just because someone is Black, or especially if they're Black and they're involved in the church, that they just have the conversation and not feel as though that they have to hide for some reason. I don't know why we do. So again, for me, the 2 reasons that, based on my experiences and thanks to Lisa, based on my experiences that I have had from my mental illness and the experiences of other people who I've met who have different mental illnesses, whether that's bipolar, schizophrenia, depression. So said that for some reason church people always tell them they could pray everything away. And so I really don't know why that's usually I think it's just it's natural for us to say, well, are you praying? Well, most people are praying, but I think we shouldn't automatically assume that a person is not praying just because they're not. I think if we, one of the things that hey Harold, one of the things that I think we really should start doing, at least in the church, is just speaking more about what mental illness looks like. It's not just the person talking to themselves. It's everyday people, functional people who get up every single day and go to work, mothers, fathers, teachers, and especially for us, and to not think that it's a white people thing. It's only white people who go to therapy. It's only white people who commit suicide. It's only white people who take medication. No, it's black people deal with it as well. And I found this article, and the article was talking about how the mental health in black church, because sometimes it's an oxymoron because the two usually don't go together. Black people, we already know, as we deal with the most oppression in America and around the world. When you look at all the things that's happening to us with, hey, Cornetta, when we look at all the things that's happening to us with, whether it's police brutality, voter suppression, all the things that we have going against us, going back to slavery, that already puts us at a higher risk for dealing with the mental illness. And we're at a higher risk for dealing with or developing a mental illness, but we're the least amount of people who actually go and seek help. So that's why I really wanted to come on here today to talk about why that, why based on my experience we don't get help. And I don't know if some people have experienced that, like if they've have experienced what they've heard in church, like what someone has said to them that may have rubbed them the wrong way. Because I know for me, it actually pulled me away from going to church for a long time. Because I was like the community that I turned to first for everything. Anytime I had a problem, I always went to church leaders and people that I've had close relationships to in church. But for some reason, when it came to dealing with the mental illness, I don't think that a lot of church people or church leaders were equipped because they didn't have the background knowledge. Oh, you're welcome, Cornetta. They didn't have the background knowledge to actually talk about what mental illness is. And so I think in the church, one should start talking about it. And then if people only feel comfortable with getting therapy or counseling in the church, we should have someone who is trained and someone who has knowledge about it in the mental health sector. My mom says sometimes people don't know that they need help. Yeah, I don't think people sometimes they don't know that they need help. They think that everything is fine for them, but other people tend to pick it up on the outside that something is wrong with them. And so I will continue to shed light on mental illness and talk about it. If there's any topics in particular that you guys would like me to speak on, feel free to email me, text me, call me, and I will continue to shed light on it. And that's pretty much it that I have. Those were the only things that I really wanted to make sure that I highlighted. So I hope that you guys enjoyed my video. Feel free to share. I will continue to post my articles because a lot of you tend to share my articles that I write. If you would like my articles, I will definitely repost them for you all. And that is it. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Bye.